out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Tim.
Ryan, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Here's to Satan.
Good morning. To draw the connection for our listeners, thinking that may have been a beer can opening.
It was a rock star.
People listening.
Mama needs her juice.
Yeah, I mean, I had coffee this morning, which I don't too often. So we're ready to talk about possession.
Oh my God.
Hello, everyone listening out there. Welcome to episode 41.
Hey now.
Of the show, Dismembering Horror, the
Pretty
podcast
intense.
show, where myself, Ryan McDuffie,
And myself, Tim Haslin.
we talk about what worked for us, what did not work for us, and anything interesting or noteworthy about a horror film that we have seen on our quest to see horror films that we have not seen, in the quest to see things that make us go, ooh, or, or God.
Or
Yeah. And I think we've had pretty good string of them.
Yeah.
In the last two. I don't know about actually Inside and Satan Slaves and Wrong Turn.
yeah.
No,
We're
these
coming out of a dip.
Right. But these, I think we've had an uptick with these last two, personally.
Definitely.
Anything else about this show, what we do here? Oh,
It's for you,
right.
the listener. It's all for you. We're here for you.
Yeah, so let us know.
Just in case.
I said, how we watch our films or whatever I just said about how we watch our films. So really we want to be watching and talking about films that you want us to talk about. So let us know.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah, we're your friends.
Yeah.
Be our friends. Come play with us.
Right. Man. Possession, Tim.
That's exactly the response that you should have.
I gotta say, I mean, we want people to listen to this, and actually the spirit of this too is that you've watched the film, hopefully, or you've seen it before, so it's sort of like this is the fun of sitting down with your friends you may not have with you, just to kind of like digest and deconstruct a film you saw, which is kind of especially fun to do with horror films in a way. But I gotta say with this one, Tim, if you haven't seen it, like, I don't want to...
You should, it's like you should pause this.
Go see it, watch it.
Go find it.
It's
a little hard to find, but you can get it.
Yeah.
It's at, if there's a good video store in your town or whatever, they'll have it.
Because it's a horror classic, I think.
Yeah. But certainly considered cult, following sort of classic.
Yeah, but it's kind of strangely not available for streaming conveniently.
I think it was. I feel like I saw it recently. In the last year or so.
It's just an in-between rights thing now.
I mean that I'm
But there was like a Blu-ray limited edition to 2000 released that's available on like the official website for $70.
Whoa!
Out of print, but on Amazon it's for $40. So
Jesus Christ,
pretty cool. But it looks really neat. Yeah, the box set.
God.
So yeah, we should summarize it.
No, we should watch the trailer.
Yeah, we haven't seen the trailer. Let's watch the trailer.
Yeah.
All right, from
I can only imagine.
1981 with everyone's boy Sam Neill.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the trailer for Possession. At least some of it, the partial trailer for you guys.
Beyond the realm of human desire, there is a darkness.
Well, that's why I'm with you. Because you say I for me.
Love opens to absolutely unknown horizons.
Isabella Johnny, the internationally acclaimed actress in her most explosive, controversial role. Sam Neill, Heinz Bennett, two men, and a woman no man could ever possess.
That was certainly the movie.
Dude.
I think this is the grayest film I have ever seen in every sense of the word.
Oh. Yeah, I get that. It's
stark in visual and and feel.
Well, just and in sort of like thematic context, it's like I spent a lot of the movie going, what is going on? But not in a bad way.
Yeah.
In a like, I want to like my brain was spinning on a bunch of different possibilities, and I was like, is it this, or is it this, or is it none of these? Is it none of the things I'm thinking? Like, what the fuck's going on?
And you really were, Tim. That wasn't a thing of note, was that I thought I wanted to mention how you, like, within the first couple minutes were like, what is you said, what the fuck is going on? And then like half an hour later said it with the exact same tone and intonation, you know, like throughout. But yeah, in a way where it was just like, well, that seems to be exactly how you're supposed to be feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
So can we summarize this film as if we hadn't read the Wikipedia summaries? Because that's kind of the fun of the summaries.
Yes.
So our first section, we said we do what works, what didn't work, things of note, but we also do...
there's definitely some shit in the Wikipedia that's like, really?
Right. But we also do a summary to, not again, we hope you've seen it. Watch it. Watch this one before we spoil it all. But with the summary, we kind of hope it functions as kind of like, okay, let's just get on the same page. You're plugging into how we sort of picked apart the events that were important for this.
Yeah. I'm trying, how the fuck do I do this? Okay. If just on the surface, ready? Here we go. Yeah. A guy comes home to his wife. He's been gone for some
wife and
reason. Wife and kid, and obviously he's been gone a while, and there's some shit that she's not chill with. Like they're at each other right away, kind of like, you know, a lot of marriages.
Tim,
I wouldn't know, but I mean, I know people who are married. So they are just at each other, and very quickly it sort of comes out that she's been seeing somebody else, and he flips. And so you spend a bunch of time with him being, quote unquote, possessive of her, and it's just total fucking in your face chaos. But ultimately it's sort of like, what are we going to do now? Mm-hmm. And then shit.
Amongst all the yelling at each other.
Yeah. They kind of come to terms in a way where it's like, Sam Neill's going to effectively take custody of the kid and the apartment. And she's going to kind of just go off on her own and show up on weekends.
And we have Sam Neill as Mark. And then...
Isabella Johnny.
Yeah, Isabella is Anna.
Right, Anna. Yeah, so Mark and Anna, and I mean, so they can't be in the same room together. It's chaos.
It basically gets into, okay, she's left. She's living somewhere else. And then he sort of follows the trail of, okay, well, it's not with her other boyfriend lover. It's not with this, you know, her close friend. Where's she at? What's going on with her? She kind of pops up from time to time. He's trying to do his best to take care of their son in the meantime. And he just gets more and more just sort of insight and clues as to kind of something that even with insight and clues just becomes more inexplicable and mysterious.
Well, yeah. And I think a big part of the context of what's going on is sort of his obsession with wanting to know what's going on. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of his actions are sort of based on that. He hires a PI to follow her around, right? He like goes to her supposed boyfriend's place and she's not around. So like it's a little bit of a mystery of like, where is she and who's she with?
Yeah, exactly. What's going on with her when she's not here?
Yeah. And then when she is there, she's so like flipped out that it just adds more to the like, what like, why is she like that?
It's hard.
What's driving
they
this?
both seem kind of like they're shells of a person.
Oh, yeah.
Which then gets into, again, this is the summary. There's a doppelganger element too.
Right.
But they're such shells of people, not only because maybe that feeds into the doppelganger thing, but it was interesting in such a way where at least with him, he's actively taking care of the son in such a way where it gives you just enough to kind of hold on to, as that maybe there's some sort of sense of hope at the end of this. I mean, not actually,
like,
because
he's
it's so
such a
bleak.
Dick.
Because he's so horrible. But they're both. I guess what I'm trying to say is they're both equally far gone. But with her, and since we're kind of with his perspective, with her, there's kind of a mystery element, and with him, it's kind of like we're rooting for him maybe more because he's the one who's immediately or who's taking care of the kid.
I mean, you may have felt that way. I did not root for him at all.
Sorry, I'm saying maybe I'm rooting for the kid. Who, based on the ending, is kind of like our one. What am I trying to say? The kid is basically our one kind of like, semblance of hope in this at all. He doesn't even shine a light amongst all the gray. That's all this, but it is sort of like, that was sort of almost the hang your hat through line on it for me, is what can save this poor kid? What's going to happen to him?
Yeah. So it's almost too like the kid is kind of he's the only one who's living in an actual reality, and everybody else is just off.
That's what it is.
In their own psychosis, so to speak.
Exactly. That's what
or whatever
it is.
you want to call it.
And there's definitely that element going on of like, when you're, maybe this is getting past a summary here, but you know, when you're a kid and like your parents are just sort of leaving, maybe, you know, I can relate to the divorce aspect, just saying, oh, your mom's just here. Oh, just this is going on now. And you're aware
here's the babysitter.
Right. There's a whole other layer of stuff going on that you're aware of, but not being told about.
Yeah.
And how, I don't know, that was just a lot of kind of what is going on in this movie for me, was just, again, from the kid's perspective.
Yeah. But in the end, sort of the wraparound of the summary is like, all of this craziness leads to kind of a complete like dissolving of like the lines of reality.
Yeah.
There's a spy element.
It gets into
just chaos.
Heavy, almost like Lovecraftian metaphor.
Yes,
for
definitely.
You could say divorce or inverted love.
Yeah, and like the whole doppelganger thing I think is really interesting, because I think you could take it a bunch of different ways.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of this you could take a lot of different ways,
which I was
like.
So good.
Yeah, I like that, because it's almost like, it's like, I remember in acting class back in the day, there were certain actors and actresses that you couldn't really pinpoint why they were so compelling. And then an acting teacher of mine once said, like, a lot of the time she said this about this one actress. She's like, she's such a blank slate that we are filling in all of the gaps of like what's going on with her. Mm-hmm. And we're just projecting our own state, given the context of the scene or whatever, into her. And she's so open and like neutral that we will put anything into her. Mm-hmm. And it makes her seemingly like this brilliant actress, because we're like, fuck, look at all those things she's doing. And she's really kind of just existing. And you're like, holy shit. And in a weird way, this movie is, I mean, not neutral, but like kind of, it's like you said, it's so gray that we're like trying to put in meaning all over the place. And it all kind of works in my mind. Like it's...
Because, I mean, there's enough, it's a big enough situation going on that...
It's like the suggestibility aspect of life.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to apply what you know to a vague context because you're so suggestible to your life experience.
Right.
And so it's like, if you come from, I don't know, if you came from a religious background, I bet people who come from that would watch this movie and be like, holy fuck, it's Satan.
Right.
And if you're like me and you didn't, I'm like, it's a fucking metaphor for possession and obsession and like heartbreak, you know, and like how you replace that or want to replace it when your heart is broken.
And so now to, like, as you said, finish up our wraparound summary here, when we were saying metaphor, Lovecraftian, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Well, it gets to that she is housing, not only is she murdering people, the men in her life, she's housing and maybe helping to not birth, but herald in and raise these meat creatures.
Well,
these like...
I mean, I think it's all one creature in various phases of development. Yeah.
Right, because first, the sort of evolution is at first we just sort of get a sort of can barely see it black monstrosity gooey thing in the back of the bathroom.
It's almost fetalish. It's sort of covered in tar and blood. And
then we get something with like that's more just a stump with eyes. And then we get something with some tentacle limbs. And then we get something that's like a torso, but where the bottom half is just a phallus.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And then it turns into Pretty Sam Neill.
Yeah, that's right. Oh,
don't open it! Don't open
what
it!
What every mother dreams of her child becoming a Pretty Sam Neill.
Yep, and then ends with the child going. One of them dies. The original Sam Neill we're with dies, and the original woman dies too. Right, she kills herself shooting through him, and then the doppelganger woman is there, taking care of the kid. The other Sam Neill doppelganger arrives. The kid's going, as I just said, don't open it, don't open it. Hides in the original fluid womb of the bathtub.
Yep, there you go.
Just goes in there. And she goes up to the door and she doesn't open it, but probably does.
Yeah, the world just explodes.
Yeah.
As far as we know. Oh, man.
So how would we rate this fine film?
Well, I think that I would buy this. Because I think there's enough... I mean, it is fucking crazy. I kind of feel similarly to, like, Requiem of a Dream.
For a Dream? Right?
For a Dream? Requiem for a Dream. Is that right? Whatever. In how I don't think I could take watching this again soon, but I want to watch it again. You know what I mean? Like, I need a break from this movie because it's so fucking in your face and intense. But it's got so much fucking awesome craziness. And even just from a film perspective, like the camera work and blah, 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 is so good that I think it's very valuable to study.
Yeah.
And so I would want it on my shelf for sure.
I mean, Tim, ditto. Buy it for every reason you just said. And
I'm not spending $70 on it.
But if I had it, I would spend $40 for that. Limited to 2,000, Tim. Only 2,000 made. It's pretty, this Blu-ray set.
Okay. I don't really care about that.
So do we have to have a subset of our buy it? Okay, but how much would I spend? No, but everything you just said as far as
you're
why
right.
You would get
40. If it were $39.99, I would see that sticker and go, "Ooh, that's a lot, but it's worth it."
Only 2,000 made.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's the one that we rented. It was really pretty. So
yeah, it looked great.
Yeah. But so yeah, I wanted to say what I agree with you with the reasons you said, but I just had to specify too, like how effective it was.
Yeah.
Like that's what sort of puts it into buy it for me. Like, yeah, when we were watching it, I was feeling the same thing of like, I don't really want, but this is so, as I said, gray and just saddening that like, I don't really feel like I want to see a lot. But then where I came around in the end, I'm like, well, this was right up there for me with the greats, like Shining, Exorcist, as far as just where it feels like every aspect of the film is just steeped in a kind of evil, you aren't supposed to be there, sadness. Like the kind of things when people say, like, why would you even like horror movies? It's like, as far as just why do you even want to go to that place? But this is one of those that is just so successful in going to that place. And that is honestly kind of like what I think I'm looking for when we say this podcast is about searching for films like that, is that rare thing of a film that is so just comes from the deepest, murkiest depths of consciousness and the ether and all that is wrong in the world.
Well, you know, it's interesting, although
all that is unholy.
If we look just like as a reminder, just real quickly of other movies that we've said bye to.
What?
We've got The Cured. I'm just kidding. We've got Mandy, which I think has you know, I think this
as
movie
far as
and
putting
Mandy,
you into a world.
Yeah, there's some
that's why I gave it a bye in the end, yeah.
Not in context, but like feel. Or what you walk away with. I said bye to opera. Same thing. I think there's some commonalities.
Totally.
Cat people. I think Us. Sorry, cat people. I like cat people. I said bye for Us.
Yep. I said bye to Calvert.
You said bye to Calvert. Yeah. So.
And then I said bye to Qui-Gon, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean dude. I would be so thrilled to have, like, on my shelf, Jaws, Alien, The Shining, Poltergeist, this. You know, opera, fucking Mandy. Like, that would be really pleasing just to have those all.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And to just be like, if I sit down, if I'm feeling like I need to watch something amazing.
Yeah.
And look at that shelf, I'd be fucking like, well...
Okay, we got to start getting more specific. Let's get into what worked.
All right, cool.
What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked for you?
Yeah, because how often does it happen where you're true, like the moments where we first see and get glimpses of the creatures, if we want to call it that, the doppelganger in its early form, like
Holy
that's just
fuck.
what it's all about for me, Tim, is that, and when I say Lovecraftian, just kind of
Yes.
your brain going, nope.
There is such a beautiful, to me, it is like this really nice, what do you call the thing when two things come together?
Coalesce?
Like, yeah. Can you use that at coalition?
Yeah.
Of Lovecraft and Cronenberg. To me, and I mean, honestly, Lovecraft, Cronenberg, and Kubrick are sort of that. I feel like this is this
Something about those wide angle lenses and the sort of
frenetic camera work, just like
and like the
in your
downfall
face.
of a marriage.
Yeah. It's like we're peering into
Kubrick,
this very, very untalked about real feeling that we all have or have experienced in some way, whether it be that we're on the outside looking in on that,
Which is like,
or we've experienced it ourselves.
well, as far as outside looking in, I think this film kind of like what I liked about Qui-Gon, but is very Kubrickian. What I love about him is the like what I said about Qui-Gon, that outside looking in. It's an observational perspective we have on this story.
And in this, the way it's shot is effectively that we are in between the argument and having to get out of the way
Oh, you're right.
the whole time.
Because it's like,
which is
yeah.
such a fucking unpleasant place to be in real life. Like when
Yeah.
you're in between the fight and you're theoretically you're sort of a third party, you're a neutral third party, but you're still there, you're involved in it.
Yeah, so how it...
But you can't really do anything about it.
So to break it down how it did that filmically, it was like... We had the wide angle lenses that would be used to sort of put us in these depressing spaces that made us feel trapped there.
And most of those spaces, not all, but most are very small rooms.
Yeah.
So the walls are on you.
So yeah, it's like, so we have that sort of feeling of like we are trapped in this existence, like kind of where you'd be in if you're one of these people feeling trapped in life. And then like what you said, sort of we are getting in the way in this middle of these arguments and want to get out. Then we sort of jumping closer and closer to the point where they are looking almost right through us or at us as they're in close-up, as we're arguing back and forth.
I mean, there are a bunch of close-ups where it is just dead into the camera.
Yeah.
And that is so unnerving.
Yeah.
Especially when you've ramped up to that point, you know, because they do a very kind of standard progression where a lot of the time the scene starts in a wide that is a sort of a full wide, whatever, you know, everybody's away from you and you're getting context of where we are. But as the scene progresses, everybody, either the camera or I think a lot of the time, both the camera and the subject are moving at each other. And then they're doing what's called a do-si-do. So you're do-si-doing in traditional. So if you were to do this in a soap opera, the do-si-do is the moment when they're having an argument and it's just over the shoulders. And then one person walks through the over the shoulder. The other person grabs them and turns them around. So they've now switched places. That's a do-si-do. They do that, except they use the camera as well as a moving object. That's why I say we're in the middle of this fight. So, like, they're do-si-doing, but the camera is swinging around as opposed to
because what works
cutting.
For me is it has that energy and freneticism of their fights where it's like they're always like bleeding or slapping each other or cutting themselves or whatever. And they're just like running around the room like, you know, rats in a maze or something.
Yeah.
So it never has that sort of... it never settles into that sort of almost familiarity of the reverse shot in the classic sense of like, okay, the blocking, can you stand here by the sink? It's like, no, they're just kind of going.
And because...
For a lot of it. They're also the steady moments too, which are really used well to build tension.
But as you use that it's already frenetic and it's so unrelenting, but to almost feel like you, the camera, are... in the middle of it and also being grabbed and spun around by their actions. Like they're almost, it almost feels like if it were a documentary that somebody's like, that Sam Neill is physically being like, no, get over here and look at this, what we're talking about. Like, don't run away from this. Like, come here. It's
like you're trapped in it. And at any given time, what the camera's doing, what the filmmaking's doing is an extension of where they're at, the fight they're having. If they sort of have calmed down and it's the calm before the storm, we're a little bit more there and the tension's built.
And then obviously directorially, he's made a choice to tell the actors to physically move in a unnaturally over the top way. In a I would call this almost what's the term? It's it's like 1800s theater style where it's like every move has a very specific, like I'm doing the dramatic, like you put your hand up to your forehead when that signifies, you know, I'm forlorn or
So I gotta
But they're taking that kind of idea and being like, do that over the top kind of movement style. So like, you know, if Sam Neill is upset, he'll whip his head over. He does this a ton where he's like, I'm upset. And he's just like flipping his head over and then he's coming back. And it's like, it's so intensely over the top. And initially I was like, this was like, not my style of acting. And very quickly you go, oh no, this is the movie.
Well, no, I got to tie this into how you were saying in a different sense, there's a progression. And what I think is important to mention why this movie is working. Like, you say it's over the top, but that's because the movie starts at the top.
Yes, you're right.
That's like what I love and I think is so, you know, works about The Shining is like sometimes people complain about that there isn't the progression of the de-evolution of the marriage or whatever, like from the get-go. It's depressing, but I think what that allows you to do is if that's your starting point, then it allows for this huge sort of scenario what if of... Remember what we were saying was what was lacking in Inside for us was like we start with this sort of like depressing, starkest of stark situation. and that can be used really well as a jumping off place for just, okay, then what's the what if that's your starting point? How do you, if you start at the gates of hell, then this is about going in just a nice little, bicycle ride through hell here. So that's what this movie was. It's like they are already reaching the levels of being insane, from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like when he finds out about her seeing someone else, when he gets back, it's just you see what I'm saying? By allowing it to be there from the beginning, you start off just emotionally already at that place, but then it just becomes this sort of like, we're here the whole time.
Well, and it also, I think because of that, it allows that when crazier, quote unquote, shit happens.
That's where that's where it allows us to go because we've already started at that place.
You're like, well, where else am I going to go? Of course there's going to be a doppelganger growing out of the ooze.
Right. Because whole time.
That is where we started. We started with holy fucking shit.
Right.
So it's almost like a weird trick to allow the willing suspension of disbelief to be really open.
Yeah. Well, from the get-go, because it's like another element that put me there, kind of like I mentioned in the summary, that we're just already so far gone from the beginning, is like I was already thinking, oh God, this is one of the most, depressing just kind of places I've been, even before the fact that they had a kid was introduced. It's like you're so just feeling for like these people just feeling so crappy. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, oh, Bob, and they have their kid. This little like weird, creepy, but cute little boy. It's just like...
And man, those cutaways, there's a few, I don't know, maybe 5 times where suddenly we're just cut away to like dropping Bob off at school.
Yeah.
Or picking him up from
and
school.
That juxtaposition of like Sam Neill just going crazy, bleeding, blah, blah, blah. And then he has his polo shirt tucked in and is showing up at the schoolyard.
Dude. So if
remember where he had a spot of blood and he's like with the kids playing?
If there's a takeaway to me of this movie is sort of like the like, what is it about kind of thing, or like what it depicts, it's like such a beautiful depiction of what you feel inside when your world is falling apart. Mm-hmm. And having these cutaways to the practical matters of life, taking your kid to school.
The extra element of keeping up the Joneses for the kid.
Right. Is so important to kind of hammer home how you're feeling in your own personal chaos.
Right.
It's just tragic to get those. And then like, oh,
how's it going, Tim? Oh, things are good. Oh, how's it going, Mark? Things are good.
Yeah. Fuck.
But they aren't.
No. And like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the world was. I was 3 when this came out, so I don't know what the world felt like then necessarily.
Well, I felt like...
But right now, like in 2019's world, we're so just inundated with like every bad thing that's happening in the world. We are like, it's being thrown in our face.
Well, this was West Berlin. I think like sort of
right.
what
So there was some shit going on.
What our nearly built dude who wants to build a wall in our current world like represents.
Yeah.
That like wall that was there then, like
that's a trippy idea.
That sort of, I mean, at the time it must have felt like, the significance of being it up, the significance of it being taken down speaks to the significance being taken up, which anyone would know who has that basic, like, of course walls are not a good idea thing. But that is like, it must have felt like we are in the worst society could get kind of thing. Like we've had a Holocaust within a lot of our lifetimes here, and we are... built a wall up.
Yeah, we've segmented a city because we can't fucking figure it out.
Concrete.
That's actually so fucking brilliant to set this here. Mm-hmm. To set this movie in that place. That is fucking brilliant.
Yeah. Because
it, in and of itself, the setting is sort of a metaphor for, compartmentalization of your life. Or you could go, it's...
I know, because
it's so never ending the way you could pick apart this movie in its metaphor.
Each of those, since we're on the topic of spaces, if that's its larger space, but each of the the locations in this do so much to kind of get at what you're saying there. You think of to sort of that compartmentalization and what each space represents so their shared apartment where they're keeping the kid, barren white or blue walls, no decorating whatsoever, unmade beds, all this kind of thing. And
very European of the 80s and 90s. Because I had friends, even my friend from England, the way his parents in our town in the US, their place had that starkness, that white sort of, it's almost like pre-IKEA, you know?
And then you had the boyfriend's apartment, which remember when he goes in there and just kind of like, where is she? I know she's here. And he's seeing all the rooms and everything. That totally had that feel of where almost felt like it was probably set deck or not, but it felt so real and lived in that it kind of represented, how people's sort of homes and the specificities to it are sort of a manifestation of their own unhealthy psyche,
and also
in a lot of ways. Like this is this weird German dude's kind of
that had a very upper class, lots of books on the shelf, high bookshelves, ornate sort of old world architecture. Yeah, so it's a very specific thing to speak to who that guy is. Right,
the messiness of like the office workout room.
Yeah,
like that. So there's that whole thing, and then sort of we're picturing like he gets to the bedroom and we sort of get a glimpse of the bed, and we're just sort of with him going like, oh, that's where he was fucking her, right? You know, it's kind of hard with note that. And then we have my favorite as far as just affecting and horror-y is we're sort of built this suspense of, well, where is she going? Her hideout, Tim. Oh my God.
It's amazing.
It's like, so it's in this ancient kind of old Berlin, I guess, apartment building, but it's like, it's got the peeling wallpaper, the
yellow.
This movie is so, the shadows are so deep. We have that just sort of in every corner, and it's just sort of conjures this whole like, God, what is she even doing here this whole time? That's the most depressing thing. Like she's got
there's no furniture.
The only thing she's got there is wine bottles in the kitchen,
and the one mattress with the very strange green sheets on it. Like it's such a color that is nowhere else in this movie.
It's like the breeding ground for whatever it's the perfect breeding ground for whatever she is breeding there, the creature.
This is an interesting non-story thing, but really smart filmmaking, and I assume this is intentional. She spends the entire movie in blue. And everything around her is sort of a version of blue and white and gray. So it's in that color palette, except for this place, the other place, the place she's been hiding out that we don't see for a long time. And everything in that space is all in the yellow palette of like yellows and browns and really saturated.
I wonder if that ties into we have the doppelganger with the green eyes.
Right. Well, probably, because what I'm getting at is her blueness. They've chosen this. Art has said these are the palettes. She's blue. The space she ends up in that she's sort of, I don't know if you want to call possessed by, but let's call it that since the movie's called Possession. That space is a yellow, and primary color-wise, the yellow and blues make green. So the bed, the symbol for where you create life is the yellow and blue make green primary color thing. Which I think is just a fucking cool. It's just it goes to show you what they thought about when they're like, we're making decisions on what should be what.
But you never know, though, Tim.
It could just be random.
I gotta defend.
I agree.
It's. I wouldn't go as far as to say random, but also them just going, well, what feels right?
Sure.
You know.
Well, and you could take it a different way, where it's like if growth is earth. Earth is green.
But
sure.
I gotta say, just like her being in that apartment and the thought of her being that is just up there in the most like terrifying aspects of any horror movie I've seen. Just like, I don't know, man, something about it.
High ceilings are scary.
Well, not
for
just
some reason.
I mean, yeah, how it looks, but no, just the idea of her being there, that she's there when we aren't seeing her, what's going on here, just sort of conjuring feelings of what people's spaces are like,
also that she's like cleaning that space. There's this weird of almost Cinderella-y feel to it.
Well, she's maintaining it for her baby or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And like, man, there's a lot.
I said, what other people's spaces are. What I meant is not knowing what other people's spaces are when you just see them on the street. It somehow plays into that.
Well, and I think that idea is one of the big strengths of the movie in that, in a weird way, I almost feel like this movie could be called Obsession as well. My takeaway partially, and I think to its strength, the movie has given me it's evoking a feeling that I've had in my life that is a really slippery slope of the place you're at when you are insecure or concerned about the state of a relationship, and you start imagining possible scenarios. And that's a really dangerous place to be if you let your brain go there, because you'll live out an entire life of bad what ifs. I guess a good example could be, it's like if you've called your significant other and you know that they're driving home and they don't respond, you can very easily go down the pathway of, oh shit, what if something happened? What if they got a flat tire or what if they crashed? Or what if they got pulled over and it was, not actually a cop, it was a stalker, and that stalker then kidnapped them. And what if now they're, in trouble, or now they're being raped, or they're being killed. And you start to snowball down this path of horrible what ifs. In a way, this whole movie could just be looked at from the opening scene when he has the interaction where it's like, shit, trouble in paradise. And the rest of the movie is inside Sam Neill's brain of the what ifs.
Yeah. Well,
and that, to me, that like just the possibility of, or that's what it's evoking, is so fucking fun and awesome to me, because it's like, I've been there. Like, we've all been there, of the like going down that pathway.
I mean, I think that's exactly what the movie is about, and how I would describe that is, what was that quote at the beginning of the trailer? Love opens to absolutely unknown horizons.
Totally.
And so what that means is, like, in your scenario there, when you're in love with someone else, that means the power of that love can, opens to unopened horizons, unknown, absolutely unknown, never-ending horizons in the positive way. That's what we focus on.
Yeah.
But that just means that inverse is also
That's
there
right.
now.
Yeah, and when a relationship ends, it's hard to accept sometimes.
Right.
And it can make you feel like you're going completely fucking nutso.
Because that's the inverse of the positive side of that love, is that's what, like he says, that quote, love opens to absolutely unknown horizons in both directions.
So that's an amazing...
That's what it's about to me, which you said
I
earlier.
Agree. I think that is an amazing thematic idea to write about and put onto film, and they've done it, to me, in one of the greatest ways in film I've ever seen.
Yeah.
There are other movies about this, but I think a lot of those movies are on the nose.
Andrzej Żuławski. Just had to say his name because you're talking about who did this, and he did it.
Crushed it. So a lot of what we've just talked about is very sort of broad,
but falls under what worked for us.
Totally. But let's hone in on some specifics.
How about we already kind of mentioned it, but just the two leads themselves and their acting, like, loved it. It was right up there. She
is incredible.
The showcase scene for me with her was the miscarriage scene.
Yeah. That's probably the most well-known scene from this movie. There's a meme about it.
I didn't know.
It's turned into a meme. That's how fucking...
But just that utter horror of the situation, then the visual of that, you have this blood and milk combo coming not only...
out of, like, all her orifices,
Right, they're coming from her orifices,
around
her face and neck and area.
Fucking intense.
And just then her performance, but above anything else is her performance, which we just hang on.
That's one take. That's a continuous shot.
Right.
I mean, I'd love to see, actually, we should have marked how long that take is, because I don't know if you know, like, if the layman knows how hard it is to be in that state without taking a break.
Because you're just literally are doing that.
It is.
You are in that state for that long.
Exhausting.
It's like the hold your breath when someone's under water. You know?
I mean, it's an amazing performance.
But that's what allows you to go that far.
Yes. Yeah. You could. Oh man, I was gonna say you could just watch that, but you should watch the whole movie. Definitely. I agree though. That is the I think the high point of this movie.
That's when we've
happy
reached...
accidents too. Like when she slams, like they did a good job of constructing the bag of groceries she has. So when she does slam it against the wall, it explodes.
Oh.
But it explodes in such a beautiful way. Like it hits her, it hits the wall. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
It's the yellows. Like she's blasting the yellows up against the wall in this very blue slate. So again, or blue color palette.
I just wanted to...
It's amazing.
To wrap up the performances side of thing, just got to mention too each of the side characters. Like you had the boyfriend and the best friend Margie, and then the son. Like each of them were just such kind of unique, memorable characters that sort of fleshed out, did something to like flesh out this little world we're in.
Hell yeah.
Of like, as I sort of already described the son earlier, but the German guy, the boyfriend, was just so like shirt all the way unbuttoned, rode on his motorcycle.
Yeah.
Had all these weird kind of like, but very certain to himself philosophies he'd espouse.
Oh God. Like the first time we meet him, he's just touching Sam Neill.
Yeah.
He's just fucking, it's so unsettling.
They go from that to fighting.
Like, I fucking know this dude.
Yeah.
Like I've met this dude in my life, and it's so like you just want to like run away. It's like, yeah, God,
and then like stop. The best friend Margie, who he goes to, is like, oh, I know she must be with you. Da da da. Where Margie, it's like they have this weird love hate or this like hate attraction thing going on between Sam Neill and the friend Margie, where it's like she's just their relationship is to like belittle each other,
right? But
then they're like coming up on each other kind of weirdly. Remember that?
And even just when he like comes back into her room and sits down on her bed, I don't think we don't see where it leads to, but like they just sort of embrace in a like she puts her head in his lap in this sort of like, it's
Are they
like
gonna do it? You know?
Yeah, but even it to me it almost felt like, yeah, we kind of hate each other and we're at each other, but also sometimes you just need to be held.
Mm-hmm. And they have the mutual person they care about on some level,
right?
Going through this,
yeah. I mean, fuck.
And then the casting of the son was just at that right level of where it's like you're almost sympathizing for the parents as far as like he's, you know, just brings out how like little kids, they're like kind of like weird little aliens where you're like, I just have to take care of this thing.
Yeah, he's not old enough to take care of himself.
Yeah.
And he's not an infant, so he's not completely helpless. He's in that they picked the right
you
pocket.
can see that he's fully forming opinions and trying to figure out the situation of what his parents are going through, but just in his own kid way can only boil it down to this feels right or this feels wrong. And all feels wrong. I
think there are two moments leading up to the final moment where he actually has sort of an actionable voice where he's saying, don't open it. But before that, we see there's two specific times that you see him and you kind of get where he's at in that same thing of what I said of like, he's not quite old enough to take care of himself, but he's not so young that he's completely helpless. Mm-hmm. The first one is...
All right, because they leave him alone and he's like got food all over his shirt and face.
And he doesn't quite get it.
Yeah.
He's still talking about the boat, the toy boat, sailboat that he's been given. You know, so you're like, fuck. Right. He doesn't have
a frame of reference for what's normal or not. Yeah.
And the second one is actually just when he gets taken to school. Mm-hmm. And you see him in the context of an adult in the real world where it's like Sam Neill is a full-grown human standing next to this little kid, and he's very small. He's got little shorts on and little socks and boots in his backpack, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, he's little.
Yeah.
Like, he's real little. Like, this is first grade, maybe.
Hello, Bob.
Right? And they meet the teacher, which is a whole nother metaphor crazy thing that she's another doppelganger.
I put that as what worked for me was the level in which the doppelgangers are implemented and explained.
I think it's a lightness and darkness thing in a way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's about, well, I think it's more not light and dark, but a sort of idealized.
Yes. Yeah.
And not.
Yeah, totally.
Because we have Sam Neill, like, who, you know, he's like, oh my God, it's impossible. You look just like her. So this woman who looks just like her, but is this pleasant school teacher. And then, but then we sort of get how hyper good-eyed in a bad way of like, there's something pod person-y about it with the Sam Neill doppelganger at the end.
Yeah, I guess I just take away an idea of there's a spectrum. And the Sam Neill doppelganger is on the dark end of the spectrum, and the teacher is on the light end of the spectrum. That they're on the same line, and that the non-doppelgangers, Anna and Mark, are in their chaos smack in the middle of that spectrum.
Or I'd say they're actually being pushed to the lowest end of the spectrum, and that's almost what causes the doppelgangers.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's just how
it's almost maybe it's spectrum is the wrong place to put it.
No,
it's
it's
sort
right.
of reflections.
But like the fact that the school teacher doppelganger is just there, and you're like, oh, has she been the school teacher their whole time?
Yeah.
No one else is questioning it.
Well, and that they end up at the last shot is the two of them with a frosted glass door between them, and Bob face down in a bathtub.
But
and bombs going off outside. Like,
I just love
there's something about that I don't know, it's just good.
Well, that it was so, as
Why
I said,
is it good?
the level of which it was not explained as far as the sort of rules. Like, we get that the Sam Neill one came from the creature she was harvesting or whatever, but yeah, then her doppelganger, that's a school teacher, and just all that, and how when they're introduced, how they're explained, it's just all at that level where it was just perfect.
Well, and the kid saying don't let him in is, I think, is sort of a brilliant thing of kids,
like dogs
kids
and cats
know what's going on.
Yeah, animals.
Right?
Yeah,
and if you were to take it. Well,
that's what made it a great horror movie ending for me. It was just him screaming that and running. And then because then you have that idea of like, oh, but because he's just a kid, the sane parent isn't listening.
Yeah, if you were to make the leap that it's a snake eating its tail kind of thing, and forget about the literalness of things, that we've now returned to a point where let's forget that the teacher and the doppelganger are not Mark and Anna. Let's just say that they are still Mark and Anna. In this final moment, you have the world kind of blowing up around them, and Bob being like, don't do it. And it's like, in a way, we're just starting the movie over, right? Where Anna can open the door and let Mark back into their lives. And we can start this chaos all over again, regardless of the context of what just happened, or the context they're a doppelganger.
Oh, man,
it's just them.
That's a big aspect of...
It's just a couple who can't stop ending up with each other, but in their chaos.
Right, so that snake eating its tail effect is just what makes for such an effective horror ending.
And to have the kid, the innocent one, being like, fuck, don't do it again. Like... let's not go through this over and over. That's why movies like Eternal Sunshine exist, right? It's talking about that same thing. We're going to keep fucking going through the same fights and fuck ups until we learn not to.
I think that gets at that horror of like the human experience condition of we like to think in things in terms of some sort of finite ending or culmination in aspects of life, but life is always the journey.
Yeah.
You know?
And if we're not careful, we keep repeating shit
the bad circles.
Yeah,
the bad
until we
traps.
figure it out and actually grow. Mm-hmm. Like a demon fucking spawn growing out of your killing of other people.
Yeah. We had briefly mentioned shots earlier, how it was shot. Just to sort of come back to that. I mean, we already gave an idea of the palette and the wide angle lenses, but there are those few choice flowy shots where it just sort of like at the beginning in that meeting room where it just kind of swinging around them, like what you said about during the fights, what it was doing. And then at the end, when he's going up the staircase, it just kind of uses the space in an interesting way to like fly underneath the staircase, look up. But it was my other favorite those kinds of shots were riding on the motorcycle at the end. Do you remember that? When he was like centered and you had him going through these like shadowy arcs,
and he's just
tunnels.
yelling?
Yeah. It was just like, where is he even going? Oh, he's just going to crash. Like he was just simply going to get away and just driving manically. But we had both shot and reverse shot wide angle of just him on there driving. It felt like something from a much more contemporary movie. But that again was maybe more very, very Kubrick too, that style.
Yeah, and sorry to sort of pull back into sort of the metaphor of it all. It's like that shot of him going through those, the light and the darkness and just yelling is in its own way just the perfect fucking depiction of how we feel when we've hit our limit of insanity. Like we're like, we can't take it anymore. I'm just yelling.
You're just going until you crash faster and faster.
Yeah. That is... Fuck, this director is amazing. I need to go watch it, like other shit of his.
It also just demonstrated how it works so well for me. Like, and again, these kinds of observational movies, this happens a lot. The Kubrick, the P.T. Anderson movies, where it was the details of the actual story amounts. Like, I didn't know he was a spy until I read the Wikipedia.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck?
I was missing like probably not more than half the dialogue, but I was missing a good chunk of the dialogue.
Agreed. I had a hard time just staying with what they were actually saying.
Right, but it doesn't matter at all.
I agree.
And it's only just going to be icing on the cake for rewatching it.
Totally. Like, that's actually a big part of why I want to rewatch it, because I know that every time I watch it, I'll get more, I'll, like, understand more.
Right.
Even just literally the words they're saying. But, like, that whole cutaway monologue thing of her is maybe my favorite part of the movie. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
What are you referring to?
So there's this whole sequence of her talking about Sister Faith and Sister Chance.
Oh yeah.
And it is a little bit of a departure. It almost feels like it's more home video. Mm-hmm. Maybe Super 8-ish feeling of it's a camera in her face and she's just sitting up and she's sort of manically trying. It's almost like we're watching the actress try to get the monologue out. And she's struggling with getting like it. To me, it actually felt like what I've seen in like an acting class or a rehearsal, where you're really being pushed to get to a place where you're working on the performance and the comprehension of the dialogue, and she's in that place. And they're even cutting where when she sort of goes up on a line, they're cutting and she's saying the line again. And there's something really pleasing to me about watching that experience in the literal context of it, as if we were watching a rehearsal, but also in the story context of the movie, because it's almost a pause from this craziness of the movie where we just get her in isolation trying to work out an idea. And the idea I didn't quite get, like she's this Sister Faith and Sister Chance thing. I was like, I don't really know what we're talking about, but the idea is interesting in and of itself.
Depending on your personal views or just how you're reading it, it could either be read as this is just her insanity at play in verbal form, her trap being, shown, explained, or it could also be like, this is actually some kind of semblance of something that's more positive trying to come out.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's something so human, I guess, about that particular moment. Like, I felt like most of the movie we're watching this super heightened version of behavior. And this particular sequence, I felt like I was watching a real human having a very real experience and trying to work through it. And I've been in that place in a relationship before where you finally, like, you've been fucking going at each other and it's like chaos and toxic and crazy, and you just get to a point where you have almost you're empty and you sit down against a wall and you're just like, I wish I could explain to you really simply how I feel.
Right. There's just that core difference of not being able to feel what the other one is.
Yeah, and you can't quite do it, but you're like yearning for that. I just want to fucking get this point across. And I can't yell anymore. We're done with the yelling. We're done with all of the fucking chaos.
Right.
I wish I could help you understand where I'm at.
And
that's so fucking, like, human.
Speaking of fights like that and the worst place they can go, I really appreciated that a moment was made out of him hitting her.
Oh, yeah.
Like, rather than just it's happening or this has been happening, it's like a conscious, like, we see the hesitation and like the sort of weight that absolutely should be there for him then taking it to that level was there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like in that moment, everybody's acknowledging that this is the fucking worst thing you could do.
Yeah.
And then he keeps doing it. And you're like, and she keeps being like, yeah, that's where we're at. Mm-hmm. It's so dark and so sad.
It got, I think, connected to that scene too, just to get into a last little detail that I appreciated that I had down. There's probably lots more in the movie, but one that I happened to put down was during one of their more tension building scenes together. She's grinding the meat.
I love this scene.
It's like, oh, I'm just here cooking using this cutting raw meat with the setting up the electric knife and then putting it into this, meat grinder, which just the sort of imagery just ties so well to the kind of creatures that end up forming.
Totally. But even just from a like how you are trying to get your audience primed up, it's so fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Everything about being in this small space with this obviously not safe tool, doing a thing in a frantic way while you're having a fight, like she's kind of chopping up the meat and then shoving it in the grinder. That whole setup is just, it's putting you on the edge of, I know something bad is going to happen.
And what a great juxtaposition I realized to when you have the her light doppelganger, the school teacher, is doing the dishes and trying to clean the kitchen. Yeah, it's the opposite.
And she has physically taken apart the meat grinder and is like cleaning it out.
Yeah.
That is fucking genius shit.
But just like, so it's like, that's all you need to do. Like, okay, is it just the two of them talking in the kitchen? Well, no, what else can we do that we're in the kitchen?
Yeah. Fuck, dude. This movie there's a lot. I want to just, before we get into things that didn't work, if there are that many, the last one, just to steer a little bit away from metaphor stuff and go just into stark horror moments. Mm-hmm. The design of the creature every time we see it is amazing.
That, Tim, when it was in its like eyeball on lump form, that was just everything to me. You know what I mean?
The moment before we saw it for the first time, I remember saying out loud, fuck yes, here we go. Because you know something's coming. And then to get what we got, I was like, this is the best thing I've...
Right.
Like,
well,
it's
and
so
it was
good.
set up so well where it's just, we get these sort of shiny glimpses of something in the bathroom in the darkness that's organic and meaty. But we don't know what it is.
Seeing tentacles... I was like, yeah, I'm so fucking into this.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but it is the inhumanness of it and the metamorphosis sort of thing of it. It's got that, like a Kafka, a Lovecraft, a Cronenberg. Like it's that is some of my most favorite shit in the world. And so to get those all in this movie,
built up so well.
Yes. The kills I really like her. What's the first one? It's it's the wine bottle up into the neck of the dude, of the PI.
Right.
'Cause up until the first kill, the whole time she's so fucking volatile. Mm-hmm. Right? And she's so unpredictable, and like even times when she walked into the apartment and she's so, possessed of this, like her hands are doing this weird thing and she's just like the whole time, and you're like, oh fuck, dude, like what's this gonna lead to? And when we get to that moment where the PI goes and sees the thing that's been growing and she fucking goes after him with the wine bottle, it's like it's almost cathartic, because you're like, finally, like she's getting some sort of fucking release, because she's been so
But at the same time, she doesn't seem like she's she.
No, I agree. She's not she. You're right. There is this sort of disconnect of like, fuck.
Yeah.
But I like that about her trajectory, that there are times where it's like, oh, it's not even Anna anymore. It's just... it's the fucking possessed thing inside of her that's acting.
Yeah.
I love the stab. I mean, so before the stab, we have the boyfriend of the PI, or the lover, whatever we want to call it, the guy who owns the investigator sort of business. When he comes to look for the PI, who is his lover, he tries to shoot her, and then she just starts hitting him over the head with, like, I guess a can of condensed milk is kind of what it seemed like to me. I don't really know. But just that's a great choice, because then white shit's flying all over the place while she hits him. It's just
like
it's great.
Oozes from her.
Yeah. That one I think is fun. It's cool looking. And then the stabbing of Heinrich is really there's I don't know, you remember, she's actually flicking pieces of his chest before she stabs him.
Just giving little nips here and there before she actually stabs him. It's like enough for him to sort of stand his guard. Like, I can take a few little cuts.
Right. Yeah, I like that. And the fact that I thought, oh, he's dead. He's definitely not dead. And then Sam Neill's actual killing of him is dark as fuck, and like crazy premeditated. Like, he comes up with this whole way of doing it. It's like, what the fuck? We don't see the death of Margie, but the whole putting her in the what do you call that? The wardrobe bag.
Oh, right.
And she is throat slit. Like, she clearly she's just covered in blood from her neck down. So all of that's really great horror imagery. And that's pretty much
them
it.
Killing themselves.
Yeah, their death I think is cool. I mean, I like how it ended up.
Just kind of a classic location to end up to, where it's like at the top of a huge spiral staircase, where it's like, we know the police are coming up, and the lovers gotta, but they have this sort of fixed amount of time to sort of finish themselves off, and they are trapped.
Well, and in a lot of, when you have a sort of a off the rails style movie, I think a lot of time it's hard to get a third act that feels satisfying. But effectively, they planted some seeds, and they just let's just have all the worlds collide into the ending. And that, they were able to pull that off in a satisfying way.
Because if the middle you're showing your hand, how do you sort of top that? And you're right. I think that's a good way, is it all collides.
Yeah, and you don't have to fucking actually really understand it in this particular movie. Like, I didn't go, wait a minute. I just was like, yeah, I guess the guy with pink socks should show up and fucking be a part of this.
Yeah.
Like, sure, at this point, shit. Great.
So shall we?
Yeah.
All right. What did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not
I only have one thing, Tim.
Wow.
Well, I didn't know if this was like, I just kind of assumed it was going to be, it's called possession. I really didn't know what it was about. I thought maybe it was just a sort of more typical devil possession, exorcist type
I thought that's
movie.
where it was going to go, and it didn't.
But then the only thing that kind of tipped me off at the beginning, the only thing that didn't work for me was they have an opening credit crediting someone to creature effects or something or creature design, something of the like.
Yeah, I didn't
and then
catch
that just sort of, I didn't know how you missed it. It was right on screen, but lucky you.
Yeah.
Because that just made me go like, oh, I guess maybe that could be, she's going to transform into like, Reagan style, or are there actually creatures in this?
Right.
But just what was just so beautiful, those moments of like, that's why we're doing this show, of when the creatures first appear, the surprise of that.
So what didn't work about this?
It was just that surprise, like as effective as it was and as great as it was, would have been that much better had I not been half expecting it because of this credit at the beginning. Why do you do that?
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
I think it's just a time. That's what they did at the time, and fuck it, whatever.
Right.
Now we would be like, well, let's not
So
put
that's
that at
like
the
a
front because
backhanded-
you're allowed not to.
I realize it's a backhanded compliment,
Right.
but like, God, did not worry like that. God, as I said, we've watched, this is episode 41, and we get to a moment that's like, why we, what we're really hoping for, digging for the gold in horror movies we haven't seen.
Yeah.
And I'm just such a purist in that way. And it's just so special, like when it happens in those ways. Just felt like when, Sixth Sense, someone spoiled the ending before I saw it as a kid all over again.
Shit. Yeah, I get that. I can't really think of a thing. Everything that I think on the surface I initially would say, I'm not sure if this works for me, or like I had the initial impulse of like, I don't like this. It all goes away when you get through the movie.
Yeah.
So there really isn't anything for me.
Great. I mean, and
It just isn't like...
Essentially, there wasn't for me.
Like I said, this would be the case for any of the great horror films that are my favorites. I don't know what I would say that didn't work for me if I was talking about Jaws.
Great. So things of note.
I just don't have it. Yeah.
All right. Things of note.
This should be interesting.
Well, the banning of this is an interesting thing.
Yeah,
I
what'd you
think.
dig up on that?
Not a whole lot. It was just kind of the UK had a couple, organizations or whatever.
The term video nasties, it made the list.
Yeah. So, okay. And I guess they had enough clout to get it banned. Mm-hmm. Also, by the way, I spent the whole movie waiting for something so fucking egregious to be like, okay, yeah, I see why it got banned. This is tame as fuck. I didn't think there was anything that was ban-worthy in it at all.
I don't know, man. I have to say, like, I think there's something more to just when something is so bleak combined with, like, the sort of the key moment of the miscarriage stuff going on.
Okay.
Like...
But that seems too heady for banning.
I don't know. I just
maybe the effect. I
think we have that association of like, oh, it's the cannibal Holocaust and whatever that are just the ones getting banned on this list. But I really just see this stuffy British person just putting it on and being like, this movie shouldn't exist. From the beginning. Like,
yeah. Yeah,
this has no value,
Yeah, I guess I get that. I think that's... I almost feel like the
you really
people
want to
who
say
want
this
to
was
ban movies...
tame as...
No, I mean, I just mean that, like, of the things that I think are egregious to... Like, Inside feels worse to me. It feels gratuitous. This doesn't feel gratuitous to me at all.
I'm just pointing... I don't think these censorship people are thinking in terms of anything in this direction being anything but gratuitous. They don't think of it like as, Like,
well, yeah, I do know what you mean. I guess what I'm saying is it's sort of it's very interesting to me that somebody watches this movie and because it's all fucking metaphor, that they walked away being like, this made me feel like the magnifying glass that this movie is sort of shining a light on, I guess. I'm mixing metaphors, who gives a shit, is a subject matter that people walked away going, I don't think that we should look at this.
That's what I'm trying to say. Exactly.
I know. And I think it is so fucking interesting. And actually, speaks to the success of the movie to me, that people watched it and they were like, this is pointing at a thing that I don't want to think about.
Yeah.
And that what that thing is how a relationship's dissolving or breakup makes you feel.
But you could also say there are the specifics, almost like in Hellraiser, where it's this sort of
actually
version
has some Hellraiser
where there's this
stuff in it to me.
Version of necrophilia going on in it.
Oh, okay.
Like, what does it mean for this woman to be sleeping with a piece of gore?
Right. Okay. Yeah, I mean,
like that happens in this movie.
It does. You're right. And that, yeah. Okay. I guess if that's the thing. Well, actually, that to me actually makes more sense. Mm-hmm. That's all some dumb, stuffy asshole took away from this movie.
Yeah.
They got to the tentacle sex and they went, nope, I'm out. I don't want it. It should be banned.
To transition, that is we've already picked this part pretty high and low here, but I just gotta hear like your take and what are the implications of, like, I wanted to talk in the beyond what worked, but that scene, her having sex with the the meat creature, almost doppelganger, with still tentacle arms, whose whole lower half is essentially being utilized as a phallus.
I just look at it like it's sort of an extension on the imagery of a fetus. Mm-hmm. And the design feels kind of based off of when you see a fetus pre-human, right. Like when it actually has like all four limbs. It's creature-ish.
So then it's
right?
a mother having sex with the fetus to help birth it into its full form.
Yeah.
It's like, that's talk about snake eating its tail. Like,
yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to even sort of wrap my head around it.
I don't know.
I like that because it is just...
I read into it more as if it's like something about the fact that it's pure phallus. Like, I didn't relate it to a fetus for me, but just something that it's like,
see, that's
to have
funny.
a single
I didn't think
lower
of it as
half
this
organ.
Phallus thing either. It's interesting. That's where you kind of went. I went in this other direction. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, it's
like if your whole lower half is
unformed thing is how I looked at it.
It's like your whole lower half is a penis. Like,
I guess
being used such.
Yeah, I don't know. I
think it was more for me like just any sort of using the creature for that was just, again, like how we said, this is on the reverse extreme of positivity. Just what's the most kind of vile, like, unholy things you can be doing in this whole what if situation.
Yes. I just sort of took away, damn it, I wish I could articulate this. That the metaphor is the thing that's inside us, the dark, unformed thing that's inside us that sort of that you are both trying to exercise and you are inadvertently feeding. You're trapped in this constant loop when you're in this state of insanity that is a breakup.
Right.
And that this is just sort of a physical manifestation of that idea. And it's less literal to me that it's this phallus sleeping with her. It's more that she's just feeding it and it's a part of it needing to form. you know, the having Sam Neill watching that is actually an important aspect of that moment, because in a way, if we're looking through the whole movie through his eyes, it's his you know, falling apart over the idea of somebody else getting to be with her.
It pushes him beyond. It's beyond jealousy if it's not like another human.
And in that moment, and in that moment, he kind of accepts it. He just looks at it like, "Yep, this is where we've gotten to."
Yeah, he does.
You know, so it's not even.
Man.
You know, so it's almost like this higher plane of acceptance of the idea that is the root of the initial movie. The plot sets off with Sam Neill being like, I know I've been away a long time and something's up. Who have you been with? Have you been with somebody else? That's the kernel of the whole movie.
And that acceptance, it's extending to him, but kind of originates, I think, with the act of sex. For her to be like sleeping with it is an accepting of it and whatever it is. And that just says, you know, about where she's in that far gone Cronenbergian nightmare place of
and
what is she.
What is she saying? She's saying not yet. Almost. She's saying almost.
Oh, like it's almost close to being the doppelganger finished.
We're almost there, you know, like just accept it.
It also worked great. Sorry to slip into like things that what worked again, but just
help it.
That moment where it's like, it's showing the sort of what's beneath the skin of the pretty finished Sam Neill doppelganger. It's like, okay, well, even if it looks like this at the end, this is what it actually is.
That's right. And I think that's really important, because the thing that is being formed and birthed is in my mind, is the idea of the possession and the obsession and the like falling apart. So this doppelganger is a humanoid representation of the darkness inside of us when we're in this state. Mm-hmm. And so to see it pre-formed is sort of a better depiction, or a clearer depiction of the monster that is.
And talking about that extreme black and white of this undercurrent world of all that is horrible going on inside oneself, and then having to show up at the school with a face on to pick up your kid.
Yeah.
It's like,
yes.
And then that doppelganger, Sam Neill, all prettied up, smooth face, is then going to go, but who we know is that meat creature is going to go pick up the kid and blah, blah, blah.
Well, and then having the chaos of the final act and the sort of running away from everything, the conscious Sam Neill we've been with the whole time has sort of accepted. He's like, I need to fucking get away from all of this and just run away from it. Yeah. And the world collides into that moment and being like, you don't get to, actually. We're going to kill you and her, the versions of you and her that have been on this ride. You guys are going to die. We're going to the real world has shown up and has machine gunned you. Mm-hmm. But it didn't machine gun Doppelganger Sam Neill. It's almost like they didn't even see him. Yeah. Or they're just like, no, you're good. Go on your merry way.
So the only other thing I wanted to pick apart and things of note that were interesting, actually we already talked about, which was just the sort of implications of the doppelgangers meeting at the end. I think you covered that well. Snake eating its tail, like it's repeating itself. But so now just all the stuff that we have picked it apart, I found it super noteworthy. I think why this is all so effective is when a filmmaker takes that David Lynch-esque approach. I hate, just pinning it on him, but it's just an easy example of you are just digging up what feels right to you and interesting to you and like the thing that you're trying to make versus having the sort of over-intellectualized approach of thinking in terms of metaphor, like at all. Like what he said in just, what he said in some interview or something was Żuławski, the director, and he co-wrote it. During a divorce, he wrote it.
Shocking.
He said that the movie has no point.
Yes. And I think, yes.
Those are the best movies and horror movies.
Because here's what it makes me think. All it makes me think is if you are going to intellectualize it, if somebody in the midst of you feeling like you're in your worst place, if somebody said, what does that look like? How you feel? What does that look like? You would be like, it feels like fucking this blob of dark tar, shitty fucking claws. You just start like having
and that
images
you're in this apartment or this apartment that feels this way.
I'm trapped. I'm this. You start saying these things, and effectively, it just feels like it's not a thought exercise. It's you're just literally putting images with your feelings, and this in a way, I feel like that's just kind of what this movie is. It's a extension of that process, and so yes, you can say it has he can say it has no point, but I think it's birthed out of that place. And then in the execution of the movie, they're honing in on that.
Yeah.
And being good artists about, where they end up with the execution of those feelings and ideas. But you're right. There doesn't need to be a point. There doesn't need to be a deeper dramaturgical fucking meaning behind everything. Because the meaning is implicit to the feeling.
Right, because I think we are mere humans in the face of it all. Like, that's why movies like this are so powerful, and movies that are like someone trying to make a stance in some way or overtly say something, they aren't going to get as far out as art can reach. Right. Because we're, I don't want to say flawed in that way, we're limited in that way. And that's what sort of that when you take that artistic approach to something, that's what allows something to reach the place of awe, is because it is from the inexplicable and beyond. Yeah.
That's why it kills me a lot of the time when I'm trying to describe, a story idea and somebody's like, yeah, but that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, it doesn't need to. I just let me put it on film.
Yeah.
And then you can take whatever you want out of it. But like, telling me it doesn't make sense and therefore I shouldn't go in that direction is really frustrating.
Just put on Seabiscuit for them and tell them to, go away. Oh my God,
that's hilarious. Seabiscuit.
I don't know, man. What do you say to those people? Like,
I say, fuck off. I'm going to go do the thing I want to do. Fuck you. You're the asshole who goes, no, you need to get a real job. Fuck off.
But I mean, it's interesting I like to put the counter argument, I don't want to say argument to it all, but just to put it in perspective. It's like, but at the same time, some things, the thing that they are trying to be the most effective thing they're trying to be, maybe does need to take on a more like typical kind of structure or familiar, easier to explore themes or whatnot.
That's fine. Saying that is different than arresting the creative fucking trajectory.
Yeah.
So
just wanted to make the distinction.
But you're right. Yeah.
If in case someone was trying to perk up, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a balance to it, and when it feels good, and like criticism is important, and constructive criticism, and like when somebody says, I don't know, it's not necessarily, I mean, I'm being a little extreme. It's not necessarily your reaction should be middle finger, fuck you, I'm not going to listen to what anybody says. Like, Star Wars wouldn't exist if Lucas hadn't listened to all of the creatives around him being like, yeah, but I don't quite understand this. Why don't you go flesh it out some more? That's fine and good. But like, I hate sort of dogmatic, like, nah, this is dumb, it doesn't make sense, like that shit. Fuck you.
Well, look at like the mixed reviews when any one of Kubrick's movies came out, just picking like 2001 as an example. That was weird. I don't like it. Then you had people, this was kind of like my experience of falling in love with Inherent Vice, was like, I just felt, even though I would, totally agree, first time seeing it or whatever, you just have this draw towards it.
Sure.
And it's like, there's something about it, man. Let's not.
There's always going to be some asshole who's like, ew, this makes me feel gross, so ban it.
Right. Or when
that's the person I'm saying fuck off to, essentially.
I RecommenDEADed Mother is one of my favorite horror movies recently.
A lot of people were not into it.
When the movie ended, I was just shell shocked. I was floored by the experience,
Yeah.
you know, and just those fleas, one of those little screens
Yep.
there. And then just these people like this was like, well, that was a waste of 2 hours or whatever.
Right.
And I was just kind of like, huh? What? What? Hello? What? You said earlier, you know, you're defined to sort of, you know, mince words and choose sides, blah, blah, blah. Again, with a different thing you brought up was you're saying, talking about the heightened acting style or whatever emotions they're reaching. But just for whatever sake, is it heightened? Judging by the situation, like...
On its surface, in relation to how we've watched actors act in a real, you know, this movie lives in a context that is trying to depict something close to reality. It seems over the top. But in the context of this movie, it's not at all.
Have you seen much Cassavetes, specifically Woman Under the Influence?
I have not, no.
And I think actually I heard like someone in a review for it referencing, now that I come to think of it, someone compared it to the scenes from a marriage, like Woman Under the Influence is the one I've seen that stands out to me, where it is just like these similarly like long takes, just couples. It's just sort of like a whole movie just evolving into just a couple just kind of going at it kind of thing. But it's so real. But it's like essentially exactly what's going on here. It's just screaming. It's just screaming at each other. It's just these sort of like, you know, moments of hitting and just of whatever and running from room to room that don't feel necessarily sensical. Someone could call over the top, but only feel utterly real, like you're watching a home video.
Well, I think the distinction happens in that humans behave like this in, I think, generally speaking, in snippets. They have moments of this type of behavior. But this movie is front to back this behavior. And I think that's the thing that feels like it's like, oh, this isn't really real. It feels over the top because it's on that frequency from start to finish. Whereas those moments in real life exist all the time. They're just moments. So, and there are examples in film when you see this where I think you could, if all of The Graduate, you know, the movie The Graduate, there's a moment at the end when Dustin Hoffman's character is trying to find the church, and he goes into a gas station and he says, you know, he's like, hey, do you know where this church is? And the gas station attendant is just sort of like, well, you know, it's, you know, you could, is it this church or this church? And Hoffman has this moment where he like is overcome with the frustration of it. And he's like flips his hands up and he like slams his hand down onto a phone book a couple times. And it's such a fucking real moment. And an amazing sort of depiction of a human thing that works in moments in a context of a world that we're trying to be, oh, this is a real, we're watching a movie that's based in reality. And so it's superhuman and we go fucking look at it.
I just would, I guess I want to maybe argue on the side of like, it's not that, it's I think it's the amount that we're getting and where we're coming into the story that would make it feel quote unquote unrealistic, that we're used to some sort of build or context in order to get to the moment of Dustin Hoffman slamming on it.
Yes.
But to have a movie that is all that means that it's all that, not that it's inherently unrealistic.
I think part of it is so in this movie, in Possession, the moment that seemed how am I going to say this? Unrealistic. Before we've gotten off to the races of the rest of the movie, when they they meet at the cafe and they're full throated yelling at each other. I'm like, in reality, somebody would be like, excuse me guys, like this is a little, like you got to calm the fuck down.
And they start by sitting, not facing each other.
Right. So that's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say heighten. It's like we're just lifted up above where in the real world, if we were to see this scene happen between two people, it would be close.
But it was like...
But other people would maybe get involved. I don't know.
Felt unrealistic to me, if anything. That scene was starting off sitting next to each other without daring to look into each other's eyes. But then once I bought into that, then I was with it. I was off to the races with them knocking over chairs and yelling and all that, you know? Like, I don't know.
I get you. I think it's a fine line because
that's why I wanted to bring it up.
I've seen quote unquote bad acting, and sometimes it's the best shit you can see, and sometimes it's still just bad acting. You know, like the person who wipes away everything that's on the table in a fit.
Right. I just think
there's a fine line.
And that's interesting because it is a fine line. I wonder just how many times it's because someone is just not primed for
maybe
just diving right into something so extreme, because people operating in those such extreme moments is something, because we're dropping our kids off at school again, is just something that we have compartmentalized,
right,
to be on that level of honesty.
Well, yeah, in a way, this movie is basically, this is how we would be if we didn't have the outsider keeping us in check.
Right. So it's like you see maybe some, you know, kind of a crazed, what we'd say, you know, crazed street person or whatever, yelling or something.
Oh, yeah.
You know, going like the hands up in the air, how you're describing, how is, you know, in this movie, it's like people's reaction a lot of the time is to like sort of give a nervous laugh, which I think is more similar to sort of someone starting this movie and laughing at saying their bad performances. But really that crazed street person is being more honest than that person is on their day-to-day life.
Very much so. I had fuck, we're going so long, but who cares? I had a really like poignant moment in my life a few weeks ago. I was driving. I'm in LA. I'm in shitty ass traffic, and there is a homeless man sitting at an intersection, and he's sort of gesticulating in the air with his hands and looking up, and sort of almost like you would when you're trying to capture a thought. You're like thinking about a thing, you're looking up, and you're like, no. Right, and you realize what the thing is, and you lean down and you write it down. He was effectively doing that, but pantomiming it. He didn't have a pen and paper or whatever. He's just doing that thing. And I thought to myself, like, most people are going to look at that dude and be like, wow, he's fucking crazy. And then I had this other thought of like, without the context of what crazy is, or homelessness, or like all of this stuff that we sort of were trying to define it, I was like, that dude is literally just expressing himself. Right. He is uncapped by all of the stuff that says you have to behave a certain way. You know, if you pantomime writing an idea down, you're crazy. He's like, no, that guy's just in it. He's in expression.
And it's like,
and I was like, that is actually what we're built to do.
I think we currently
we have filters,
right? We have filters, compartmentalization, and things like the socially acceptable outlets for that, such as dancing.
Yeah, all of those things are filters.
Aliens
so that we
coming in are going to think dancing is the weirdest thing.
Right.
They are going to look at dancing and then that homeless person and being like, this is just, a world of crazy.
But my takeaway is, without the filters are just kind of keeping us able to coexist in a way and cooperate so that like we can, you know,
so we can get anywhere.
Exactly. We can get somewhere.
Right.
But at its core, we're just, I mean, I actually laughed out loud in my car when I had this thought. I was like, this is the most baked thought I've ever had in my life, and I'm not stoned. But I was like, man, we're all just expression machines. And then I started laughing. I was like, where am I right now? I'm on a trip and I'm just driving in LA traffic. Fuck. Yeah. But it's true.
I think that's like kind of speaks to like, there's people who you just want them to smoke that one time, or like that guy needs to get on kind of thing. It's like that.
Yep. Cool, dude. Well, fuck, that was a good one.
Yeah. Very last thing of note, Tim.
Okay.
I just gotta say, we've already kind of alluded to it. The kid being named Bob.
You loved that.
Well, I loved it. I was what the helling it the whole time with their accents. Bob. Bulb. Oh, who's gonna take care of Bulb? I gotta pick up Bulb. It just tickled me every time.
I'm gonna dramaturg that.
A little kid. Wouldn't it be?
You know why he's called Bob?
Why?
Because he's like bobbing in the water of life.
Shut up. No.
And he's floating, and he's like,
Why
he might
isn't
go
he-
under, and he might stay on the surface. He's just right.
Don't
he's
just
perfectly
stop. Just
balanced
stop. No,
in between
no.
those two things. And then he ends up in
Isn't
the
it
bath.
funny? His name wasn't Bobby though, too.
I wonder if
Like,
that's just
who
a
names a
matter
little
of
kid Bob?
Yeah, in German, French,
Had
German,
you- yeah.
81. That you don't have Bobbies, you've got Bobs.
Well, if you know,
don't
please
know.
let us know because
Yeah.
I've never run across a little kid Bob in fact or fiction.
I love it. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. Let's wrap up Possession.
Yes, let's.
There was the nail in the coffin.
You gotta watch it. So what's next? Where are we? RecommenDEADtions? Oh, okay. I mean, I'll go.
Yeah.
I think you gotta go if you're gonna watch this, you gotta go watch Repulsion, which is Polanski.
Oh yeah. I forget if I've seen
It's
that.
in the same kind of just the deterioration of somebody's mind.
I haven't seen it. I thought that was on our list to watch. Maybe not.
Really?
I could have just been confusing
I don't
it
think
with this
so.
one. Possession,
Because
Repulsion.
I've seen
But
Repulsion,
I mean,
for
if you
sure.
haven't seen either, you would mix up those titles.
Yeah. Get into Repulsion too.
Great.
Yeah.
I've just been watching Godzilla movies recently,
Yeah.
so I don't necessarily want to recommend any of those. I will at the end once I've gotten through all 30 or whatever.
Fuck. Oh my god.
But just to like pick a random favorite of mine, because I don't think I've done it yet, go down my top list. I'll shout out to, one of my top 5 favorite films, the documentary American Movie. So it hit 1999 Sundance. It's about some, is it Michigan, from Milwaukee, Michigan filmmakers. But it's like, it just does it for me. It's the kind of film I got to revisit every year. A lot of times
I've seen it.
People, they think it's like a mockumentary when they first see it, but it's just, I don't know, man. It's great. They're real characters, but you're so endeared to them. They're great people. It follows, and just sort of everything. Tim, you've had enough filmmaking experiences where it's like, at the time maybe you're getting stressed or whatever, but then you've done it enough to realize, oh, these are the best moments in my life. This is what it's all about.
Yep.
This is me doing it, and just to sort of have that perspective.
That's
is
when
an
you know
important
the
thing.
juice is worth the squeeze.
Yeah, exactly. And it's it's a documentary on watching the juice being squozen, and I think just sort of serves as a sort of warm reminder of all that for me.
All right, I'll watch it. I don't think I've seen it.
Great, check it out. All right,
Shall
your
we
turn.
had it?
Yeah.
It's my hat? Yes. All right, here we go. What is next? It is this movie. Oh, there we go. It is The Legend of Hell House, 1973 UK.
Cool.
Awesome.
Like the era, like the name, like that it's UK.
Sweet. Great. All right, well.
You can find us at dismemberinghorror.com.
That's right, Dismembering Horror at Instagram and Gmail as well.
Mm-hmm. And at dis horror pod is our Twitter.
Is that it?
Yeah, I know Tim says that because I hate it. We hate it. I still don't know why it's that.
Character limit.
Yeah, man.
That's it.
Okay.
And I'm at Tim Aslin all over the place.
I'm at Mayor McDuffie on Instagram, which is linked to. Yeah, you'll follow we're doing stuff on our Instagram at Dismembering Horror.
Yeah.
We're linked to there. Do our updates when we do stuff. I post weekly stills for whatever we're talking about, fun selected stills, some behind the scenes. That's it. That's where you can find us.
Yeah. Thanks
All
for
right.
listening, everybody.
Yeah.
We love you so much.
And please tell your friend.
Yeah, that's right.
And great. Well, in closing, thank you all for listening.
And we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.